Dave Smith, who inspired my haircut, he sat down with Chris Cuomo on the PBD podcast, and they talked about a lot of things. Obviously, COVID was a big point of debate, but they got into a couple other things. So we're going to show a few different clips here. This first one that I want to highlight kind of is an interesting back and forth about the difference between incentives in independent media versus corporate media. Chris Cuomo acts as though independent media creators are not accountable for what they say in the same way that the more official pundits, like he and his former colleague Don Lemon, are. So let's hear this.
You have the luxury of not worrying about what happens when you say what you say. I work for a place that will get a phone call from someone that they care about, okay? It will matter to them. And you can say, well, they work for this three-letter agency that are all, bad people.
If I had, let me tell you something. This is what's really infuriating about you saying that, right? I understand the pressures at CNN where powerful people could make a phone call and then you could be in a lot of trouble.
No, it's just an accountability proposition.
Let's talk accountability. If I had your track record on COVID, I'd be out of business. Period. No one would listen to me anymore. I would have no way of making money.
I would argue the reverse.
I'd be ruined.
I would argue the reverse.
Absolutely ruined.
If you didn't tell people that there were easy ways to get past COVID and that the vaccine was a joke and everything that happened was a joke, I don't think you'd be in business. I think if you weren't doing these things, I don't think you'd have the same platform because it sells very well in digital media.
No, I mean, it's just, first off, I never said the things that you just said. The thing is that, yes, you're right. Me being against lockdowns, against mandates, against the corruption of big pharma, again, yes, that did help me,
and the
sure.
vaccine.
Okay, so as for the second part of that, it is not true that Dave Smith and company were generally speaking running around saying that, X, Y, or Z was an easy cure-all for COVID. That's just not true. And we'll get more into that as the second clip plays on. But I would like to at least be able to use some of this stuff for YouTube. So for the purposes of this little piece, we'll stick to what he says in that first part about accountability to one's audience and audience capture and incentives in independent media versus corporate media. Because there is no doubt that audience capture is a real thing in the independent media space as well as in the corporate media space. When we had Glenn Greenwald on the show a few months back, he talked about this in a clip that actually went far and wide. Saga Rangetti commented on that. Like, people actually took that to heart because as a creator in this space, you always have to worry if I say something that the audience doesn't want or doesn't like or doesn't expect, there's going to be backlash. So you can definitely fall prey to a certain audience capture where it can be tempting to say what you don't think in order to stay on your audience's good side. I don't deny that that is a risk. However, what Chris Cuomo didn't seem to realize there is that that same risk exists in corporate media. The difference is who is the audience that has captured you. In independent media, the audience is you all, 1,056 live viewers right now. That's the audience. On CNN, the audience capture that you are at risk of falling victim to are not the tens of thousands of viewers throughout the country who happen to be in an airport while your show is on. That's not the audience that's important. The audience that's
not
important,
even their business model.
Exactly. The audience that's important on CNN are the corporate sponsors and the government agencies that you cannot run afoul of. Because on CNN, it doesn't even really matter how many people are watching you. It doesn't matter what your audience is to a large extent. Obviously, they'd like more ratings so they can get more ad money. Sure. But the name of the game for these corporate media channels is to be included in the cable subscription bundles. So they are not as dependent on viewership and audience loyalty or audience trust. The audience that they have to maintain are the advertisers, which in context of this conversation happens to be disproportionately pharmaceutical companies, right? Or agencies that say, hey, you can't say that or else we're going to go after your licensing. It's not the same thing. Yes, there are certain incentives that run parallel, but the question of to whom are you accountable is different between corporate media and independent media. And I would argue the independent media incentives are healthier because at least in independent media, you are pressured not to run afoul of ordinary people. In corporate media, you're pressured not to run afoul of the multinational corporations who are sponsoring your show and these giant cable companies who are keeping you on the air by keeping you bundled in their package.
Yeah, we really we don't allow ourselves to be captured by our audience. That's why we're doing our special retrospective on boomer music this
Yeah,
weekend,
right, exactly. Yeah,
featuring the surviving members of Herman's Hermits.
yeah. Donovan.
Will be Yes, Donovan will be on.
Sunshine came slowly through
Right,
my
we're
a
gonna do
window
the
today.
the
Yes.
60s were a really groovy time with some incredible music.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the you're exactly right. There is a danger of audience capture in this medium, but
Absolutely.
in many ways that makes you accountable in the ways that if you're working for CNN, you're not accountable to the audience in any way. Yeah,
Right.
you're so far removed. Nobody watches it anyway. That's not their business model. Their business model are the cable bundles. You get
Right.
rid of the cable bundles. If the cable bundles tomorrow start saying, we don't need to have the news in the cable bundle, they'd go out of business.
Right.
A lot of people can't figure out why they're still on the air when nobody watches it. That's why they're bundled in with your cable package. I don't see how that's sustainable in a cord cutting world. I think that's definitely connected to the fact that their audience is 70 to dead.
Right.
Because who has cable? Who has cable?
Right.
Everybody's getting their streaming a la carte at this point. Even if you do have a package that includes that, it's probably like a Roku package. It's some kind of a streaming package that includes these channels. Even that's not a cable channel. So there's that. And now I look back, it's amazing to me. I ever watched this stuff. It's so transparent who they work for.
Right.
You watch these shows. It's one ad after another for your restless leg syndrome or whatever the fuck they think they can sell to you. Just one ad like that after another. And if you watch the Sunday morning roundtables, it is just full military industrial complex.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
You know, it's just gauzy shots of smiling children in wheat fields with a jet fighter passing overhead. You know,
Right.
it's all this Norman Rockwell combined with terrifying firebombing potential violence. And that's it. That's who they work for. That's who their sponsors are. Yes, there is a danger of audience capture here, but our audience, I would argue, is less dangerous. And that has the benefit of being democratic.
Right.
In the end, people vote with their feet.
Right.
You're accountable to actual people, not faceless ghouls working for Northrop Grumman or Pfizer.
Please clap.